All right, Matt. So what do Alexander the Great and Kermit the Frog have in common?
It's not easy being green. I don't know.
Their middle name.
Dang it. Should have figured that one out. I wasn't thinking the right way.
Good evening, everybody, and welcome to the Graveyard. Thank you for joining us tonight. My name is Adam.
And my name's Matt.
Now, pull up a tombstone or settle into your casket and get comfortable because this is Graveyard Tales. All right, everybody, here we are again. Matt, how is you tonight, brother?
I'm good, man.
Good.
I'm good.
Good, me too. Doing good tonight, feeling good, glad to be in the graveyard here. So, before we get into it, we'll say go check out the Potbelly Network at podbelly.com. You can find a list of shows that we're happy to be associated with, and you can find some tips and tricks on podcasting if you're into such things, you're thinking about wanting to do it. Also, go over, check out our sponsors. You know, we've always got sponsors. Every month we've got some sponsors. So go check them out. You can find their links and vanity codes in the show notes of every episode, or we talk about it in the episode. But go over, find you something, buy you something. It's coming up on the holidays. So do the shopping, get something. And we haven't mentioned it on an episode yet, but we've talked about it on Facebook and all that. But get to sending in your listener stories. It's that time when this episode drops. We have a couple weeks left before we need to have a cutoff date. We will post the cutoff date on Facebook and try to talk about it on here if we can get the episode out in time. But send us in your listener stories. It's coming up on that time of year where every year we like to showcase your stories.
Absolutely. And we have it's like we get a bigger response every year to the point where we're thinking at some point this is going to top out, you know, and we're going to get fewer stories or the same.
I hope we're always wrong.
You guys blow it out of the park. Okay. I mean, blow it out of the park, blow it out of the water, knock it out of the park. Whatever it is you do, keep doing it because you're doing a great job. Send us your listener stories. We love it. It's always a fun time. You know, we enjoy reading them, but we get so much feedback from everybody that enjoys hearing their story and other people's stories. So
yeah, that's the biggest thing is the people after we post the episode, the people are like, I love hearing other people's stories because Matt and I talk stories all the time, but you don't know these people. And when you send in listener stories, you're commingling with these people that had these experiences in the Facebook group.
That's right.
So obviously we keep them anonymous. We just use initials just for the sake of the people sending them in. But if they want you to know, they'll say, hey, that was me that had that in the Facebook group. And you can talk to them personally about it. Or if it's you that sent it in and you want to get more than just my and Matt's feedback on it, then you can say, hey, that was me. I was AB in that story this year. So what do y'all think about my stories? And we love getting it because it validates what Matt and I do. It's not just some random people that we're reading about. Again, it's you guys. It's the listeners of our show that are having these experiences, and it validates all of our work for me and Matt, and we just love hearing it. So send them in, email them to us, graveyardtalespodcast@gmail.com. Put listener stories in the subject or Christmas stories or something where we can search for it and find it easier so that it doesn't get lost because we get a barrage of emails every day.
Yeah.
So send those in to us. Also, go to patreon.com/graveyardtales, sign up to become a patron. We've got multiple different levels. We're always putting out bonus episodes and ad-free content for our $5 and $10 members if we have ads, and our $10 a month, they get our second show, Side Quest, where it's just a little bit of everything. It's kind of blue. It's just me and Matt talking as if you were just sitting down hanging out with me and Matt, and we weren't talking about paranormal stuff. We're just talking about something that happened to us, or, you might get some insider information on my life or Matt's life or something. So if you want that $10 a month level, you can get all of the bonus plus the Side Quest episodes. So Matt, that's all I've got for housekeeping this time. So why don't you tell us, what are we talking about tonight, brother?
So tonight we are going to talk about another one of these haunted hospital asylum places. This one is a little bit different. And when Adam goes into the history, you're going to understand why. But it has one of the absolute coolest stories
it really
that
does,
I've ever come across. And all the years Adam and I have done this one is really cool. So tonight we are going to talk about the Peoria State Hospital, also known as the Peoria Asylum, okay, in Peoria, Illinois.
Right.
All right. So we've done some other haunted places in Illinois. There's quite a bit, right up in that area. So, so this is, look, I promise this story you're going to hear later, it's going to blow you away. It's really, really cool.
It's one of the reasons I wanted to do this place was just for that story, because I remember hearing just the story and going, oh my God, this place sounds cool. And then looking at it, yep, sure enough, it's a cool place. And like Matt said, in Illinois, I've got family that lives in Illinois. My grandfather was from Illinois. We've been there a few times, and the family members we've got have told me about other haunted places in Illinois. So I have to look into those at a later date. But the Peoria State Hospital, it was in operation from 1902 to 1973. Now, it's located at Ricketts Avenue and US 24 in Bartonville, Illinois. So it's just outside of Peoria, but very close. Now, it started out as the Illinois Asylum for the Incurable Insane.
The Incurable
Insane. And it's kind of a tongue twister. It's a mouthful as far as trying to say this place. Illinois Asylum for the Incurable Insane. But the first superintendent, Dr. George A. Zeller, he was of the impression or the opinion that no patient was incurable. So he didn't like the name of the place, because he's like, there's not any incurable patients. So he went before the state legislature and he petitioned for a name change. He didn't like the asylum declaration either. So he wanted it to be changed to the Peoria State Hospital, since Peoria was the closest large city near it. So luckily it was changed to that, which I mean, how often do you get what you want when you go to state legislature?
Exactly.
Well, not often. Now, the Peoria State Hospital was, from the beginning, built to be an institution that wasn't like anything else of its kind. It opened in 1902, and the Peoria State Hospital was initiated by the work of the Peoria Women's League, who had seen the kinds of treatments that were being used to treat the mentally ill at the time. Well, they knew there had to be a better way to house and help these people. So from the very beginning, they knew they wanted Dr. George Zeller, who is a local surgeon, to be not only the superintendent, but the father of the institution. And I was telling Matt before we started this, normally we get into these asylums and, I'll talk about the treatment here at the end of my notes, but normally I'm talking about the treatment early on in the episode. And I'm like, this was bad. They treated their patients terribly and all that. Well, this place wanted to do it different because they saw that treatment and they said, no, there's got to be a better way. The Peoria Women's League said, no, we ain't doing that. So it's kind of cool to me.
Mm-hmm. It is very cool because you're right. This was at a time where this was a place where they sent people to be forgotten about.
Correct. Yeah.
And, the staff was overworked. The doctors didn't necessarily care, or they were doing something horrible, like using these people for experiences, experiments.
Yeah.
Is what I was going for.
Well, and it's an experience too.
It's an experience. What happens if this person experiences a prefrontal lobotomy?
Right.
But you're right. That was the case. And so for this place to be, at least to try to be the polar opposite of that, it was unusual for the time.
Yeah. From the very beginning too. Now, Dr. Zeller wanted to run a new kind of institution, which treated people with mental illnesses humanely. So he took all the bars off the doors and windows. He removed all types of restraints from the building and instituted a new holistic type of therapy. And Dr. Zeller was considered mad for refusing to lock his patients up or tie them to the beds. So the other doctors were like, he needs to be in our asylum with our people. He's as crazy as they are for not wanting to lock down these crazy people.
Right.
But there's Zeller going, no, we don't need to do that. And his open door policy meant his patients were treated with human kindness and empathy instead of like lab rats, as in the other asylums. Now, the Peoria State Hospital was regularly inspected by the state medical boards. They were doing good because they were considered to be the number one hospital in the treatments of some illnesses and the curative abilities of other illnesses. So, just goes to show you, he wasn't as mad as the other doctors thought he was. The hospital also boasted the number one nursing program in the country for 34 of its 36 years of operations.
That's incredible.
Isn't it?
It really is.
I mean, and you and Amanda have some experience in that field. And to be the number one nursing program for 34 years is quite incredible. Now, even after Dr. Zeller's death in 1938, the hospital continued to run following his vision of non-imprisonment, non-restraint, non-sedation, and only an 8-hour workday for the employees of the hospital. So a lot of times we see these hospitals that once the founder or the head passes away or retires, they just go on to do the standard, the SOP for asylums at the time. And they said, no, we're going to keep it the way he wanted it. Now, small cottages were built to house the patients and a dorm housed the full-time staff. It was a self-contained community, like a lot of these are. The grounds also contained a store, a bakery, and a kitchen. So they called it the dormitory style. When I was looking it up, they kept calling it dormitory style living and housing, because if you think about dorms for college students, it was very similar to that. But he also had cottages where in each cottage it would house several patients. So they had their own living space and everything.
Right.
The hospital finally closed its doors for good in 1973. Its closure was due to a combination of lack of funding and staffing. Now, despite the constant pleas from employees for funding and the ability to hire more employees, the state government was already on a crusade to close lifelong housing facilities like that. Now, at this point, the hospital included an astounding 63 buildings.
Wow.
On the whole campus.
I mean, that's impressive.
Yeah. Yep. It an impressive little complex that Zeller created there. Now, like I said, there were 63 buildings on the campus at the asylum's height. Today, only 12 of those buildings are left, including what they call the Pollock Hospital or the Pollock Tuberculosis Ward. So the Polish, now it's funny that this is in Illinois because my family that's in Illinois, they always go, hey, we're the crazy Pollocks of the family. So they're they embrace that. But I found it humorous because every time I talk to them, they're like, oh, your crazy Pollock aunt up here, and then I'm reading this and I'm like, wait a minute, Pollock Hospital and Pollock Tuberculosis Ward. So it made me think about my family up there in Illinois. It's funny.
Yeah.
So most of the rest of the complex has been lost to time, though. So many of the buildings, they've been condemned, they've fallen down, or they've just been torn down. Now, in 2017, the largest of the buildings on the property, the Bowen Building, was demolished amongst a lot of controversy. There was controversy surrounding tearing that down. People wanted to save it, and they tried to petition to save it and everything, but the state, the county said, no, we're demolishing it, and they went ahead and demolished the Bowen Building. Now, Troy Taylor, he popularized the Peoria State Hospital in several of his books, including Haunted Illinois and Haunted Decatur Revisited. And although it had been, an object of curiosity within the community for a while, they were all like, hey, look at it. If you got a state hospital where they housed tuberculosis patients and people with mental illnesses, there's going to be rumors within the community. Well, he took those rumors and then he bumped the credibility of this place up with his books. But since then, since his books, an attempt was made to rehabilitate that Bowen Building that I talked about and open it for tours. Now, it did appear on the Sci-Fi Channel's Ghost Hunters in 2013, Destination America's Ghost Asylum in 2016, but apparently this publicity wasn't enough to save the building. So they ended up tearing it down even after it was on these shows and people tried to save it.
And one thing that a lot of people were disappointed when they tore down the Bowen Building was the fact that it had a network of tunnels underneath it that would allow them to get to different places on the campus. And the access point was down there, and it was frequently investigated by these groups before it was torn down. So, all of them were pretty disappointed because the building was quite active. But it didn't have the structural integrity of some of the other buildings. So there was always that concern is how long is it going to be before something falls on one of these investigators, or somebody gets in there and gets hurt, so that was, that wasn't the reason they did it, but that's always a concern.
Yeah.
When you've got a building that old that is, in some disrepair.
Mm-hmm. That's true. Well, according to Taylor, the Peoria State Hospital, it started out life, even before the Asylum for the Incurably Insane, as Bartonville State Hospital. And it actually, the first thing on the property was built in 1885, and it was an empty shell of a faux medieval castle. Now, no patients were ever housed or treated in the building, and it was torn down in 1897 because they felt the look of the castle didn't fit with the, quote, modern treatment that they were wanting to provide.
Yeah.
So nothing.
It kind of gave that creepy asylum vibe.
Yeah, exactly. So nothing ever really came of the medieval castle look, and they tore it down. And then they rebuilt the asylum from there. But there's also 4 cemeteries on the grounds, and they contain the thousands of people who died in residence at the asylum. Famous graves include the former grave digger Mr. Bookbinder, Rhoda Derry, who sadly became famous because of the cruel treatment she suffered before coming to that institution, and Emily Belcher, who was the last surviving descendant of the legendary explorer Sir Francis Drake. So That was neat to me.
Yeah.
All right, Matt. So we're gearing up for the holidays. It's drawing ever nearer, and there are so many expenses that come along with the holidays. I mean, you got to buy food, but presents and decorations, and you got to buy a tree, all this junk. So it's more important now than ever to try to find ways to save time and money.
Yeah, that's right, Scrooge.
Exactly. And for everyday low prices, you can count on the most affordable meal kit of all of them, and that's EveryPlate. And I got to tell you something. I got 2 quick things to tell you, Matt. One is tonight we just did an EveryPlate meal because of all the debacle I just told you about. So we needed something quick and good before I came up here to record. So we pivoted, and Ashley made an EveryPlate, and it was done real quick. I don't know exactly how long it took her, 15, 20 minutes, because I was still trying to get home. But it was done quickly, and it was good. And the other thing is, to talk about this prices, I have the HEB app. And for you Texans, you know how cool HEB is, but I won't get into that. I was making the list for what we needed, and I looked at it, and I've got just a handful of things on there, and it gives you a total price. It was almost $200, and I could not believe it.
Yeah.
That the prices on things. So if you're dealing with that too, just get EveryPlate. It will help out your pocketbook, and it'll help de-stress the holidays.
Yeah, and because EveryPlate's prices, even Ebenezer Scrooge would love.
Exactly, and I do.
And EveryPlate's fresh, pre-portioned ingredients are cheaper than groceries, just like Adam said. So you have more money for your holiday shopping. And you can explore crowd-pleasing variety with EveryPlate's rotating menu of more than 25 weekly recipes, including 30 minutes or less, family faves, calorie smart, and veggie dishes. You can get ready for Thanksgiving with easy sides like apple pie crescent rolls and sweet potato casserole.
Oh, that'll be good and helpful, man.
Look, if you want to win Thanksgiving this year, get on EveryPlate, okay? You can simplify your weeks with hassle-free meals. With EveryPlate, you get pre-planned, easy-to-make recipes delivered right to your door. So with affordable dinners for just $5.99 per serving, plus 50% off your first box, EveryPlate helps you save money for a stress-free holiday. Get this amazing deal by going to everyplate.com/podcast and enter our promo code GRAVEYARD599. That's GRAVEYARD 599.
That's right. You can get the amazing deal that we've got for you. And all you've got to do is go to everyplate.com/podcast and enter our promo code GRAVEYARD599, GRAVEYARD, and the numbers 599. Now, we've talked about a lot of these asylums and, you know, different state hospitals and different stuff like that. But most of these were terribly run. They had horrendous treatment of patients. And anyone suffering from a mental disorder was basically just locked away from society in an asylum, like we were talking about. Many of these hospitals were filthy places, where patients were confined. They were often left in straitjackets, locked in restraint chairs, or even placed in crates or cages if they were especially disturbed and had outburst. A lot of them in a lot of these hospitals would spend every day in shackles and chains, and even the treatments, quote unquote, were fairly barbaric. And most mental patients spent their entire lives locked up inside one of these asylums. But the Peoria State Hospital, like we said initially, it wanted to be different. And George Zeller and the ladies who started the hospital wanted to take a different approach to the treatment of the mentally ill. So Peoria State Hospital, under Zeller's lead, was considered a progressive institution for its time. It advocated for the humane treatment of patients compared to the barbaric practices of these other asylums. And like I said, they removed the restraints. They provided a community-like environment. They focused on therapeutic approaches rather than just locking the patients away. But even with these reforms, the hospital still had a large patient population. They didn't get as overcrowded as some of these other ones, but they were crowded. They had a lot of people. Mm-hmm. And they faced challenges in providing adequate care to all individuals. But even though it was considered advanced for its time, treatment at Peoria State Hospital likely evolved over the years as medical practices and understanding of mental illness developed. But as a whole, the Peoria State Hospital is completely different from what you and I have talked about previously, Matt.
Yeah.
I don't feel like there are decades of this paranormal sludge getting draped on the walls and the evil that happens in a lot of these.
Right. So that was my question. That's what I was going to ask is, if this place was so much better and these patients were treated fairly, they were treated well. There was an attempt to help people get better. It wasn't this poor guy isn't going to get any better. We just need to lock him up and let him wither away. Where would the haunting come from? It's unusual to say the least, but there was definitely some, death that happened there. Quite a few people died while in the hospital. I mean, that was just an unavoidable aspect. Sure. They didn't die violent deaths necessarily. There wasn't, a butt ton of suicides.
Right.
Or anything like that. So you're right. There's not any events historically that would lead you to believe that this place is going to be covered in that paranormal sludge, as you said.
Mm-hmm.
Okay.
The only thing I can think is with the mental illnesses, that creates its own kind of torment for the individual.
Yeah.
And it would, they might stick around just because of that internal torment that they had.
Well, and we've always talked about energy, being, what fuels a lot of these, and negative energy is typically what we're talking about, but we've never really considered what if someplace had a lot of positive energy? Mm-hmm. I mean, I don't know that, this wasn't necessarily a happy place, but it definitely wasn't a bad place.
Right.
So maybe there was enough energy to fuel some of the hauntings, and maybe the energy came from the patients themselves. And as we get into these stories, maybe you'll see that, but regardless, there's still some fairly frightening aspects to the activity that's been documented here. Now, there's quite a bit of ghostly activity on the grounds that has been reported over the years, and there's been tons of paranormal investigations done. But everything that's been captured ranges from disembodied voices to apparitions, figures appearing in windows. There is supposedly the ghost of a little girl who likes to play with dolls. And she was known to live in the basement of the Bowen building. And sometimes people would see a shadow that would chase them up the stairs and out of the basement.
That's creepy.
Yeah. So, you know how you get that? You're down in the basement and it's dark. You got to go down there and then you time it where you turn off the light and you can bolt up the. I remember doing that when I was a kid, I don't want to, and even as an adult, I'm kind of like, I don't want to be down here,
Right.
So now I live in a house with no basement.
Yeah. We don't have a basement either, but I can remember going up any stairs as a kid. I always had that feeling if it was in the dark that as soon as I turned out the light, something was going to chase me up the stairs.
Right.
And I've noticed Michael still kind of does that where he has to have the light on when he goes up the stairs.
Yeah.
And even as an adult, I get the, lights off, I'm going upstairs, wonder what's behind me. But I just keep going because it's my house and it's not a basement, but it's still, going upstairs still freaks you out for some reason.
Listen, there is a creep factor to it. I remember, years and years ago, Amanda had to go out of town and, she took some of the kids with her and I was here by myself for a weekend. I had to work, and I'm sitting around watching Paranormal Witness. You remember that show?
Oh, yeah. Yep.
And be doggone if I didn't just freak myself out.
Yep.
And I got to thinking, I haven't lived alone in a long time.
Oh, yeah.
I mean, a long time. And it was kind of weird. And I'm rarely ever alone in my house, even during the day, much less at night. So, so you could creep yourself out and maybe see some things that you don't know. So I can get behind these people that you see a shadow and you get this image in your head that it's chasing you up the stairs.
Oh yeah, for sure. For sure.
People also report the sound of heavy boots walking around in the men's ward, and they've been able to locate the source of those sounds. Now, during renovations in the early 2010s, construction workers and visitors reported hearing footsteps and names being called.
Oh, wow.
It didn't necessarily say they were hearing their own name being called, which would really get to you. But they would just hear names, randomly. One witness.
What?
One witness, a guy named Trent Jeffries, he reported having been aggressively pushed while walking up some stairs. Now, he says the push was so forceful that it knocked him off balance and into the wall.
Oh, wow.
That's a pretty hard shove, and that takes a lot of energy.
Now, you saying that, it's not about this case, but I heard somebody try to debunk getting shoved like that. And they said, well, if you're creeped out anyway and a gust of wind blows you, you might think you got pushed. And my thought is there's a big difference between feeling like you got shoved and wind blowing on you.
Yeah.
All of us have been hit with wind. Do you know the force of wind that it would take to blow you over? If that happened in a building while you were walking upstairs, you would know it because other stuff in that building, in your area, would flutter, would move, would something. So I just thought about that. The debunking of, oh, well, it wasn't being pushed. They just got blown by wind and thought they were pushed is crazy to me.
Well, the idea that, that you would get shoved hard enough to actually lose your balance. I mean, you're going to feel that. It's not going to feel like wind.
Right.
And, for somebody like this guy, I mean, I actually saw a video of this guy telling this story. And I'm like, he seems perfectly logical. He certainly isn't telling this like he's looking for attention or just wants to be a part of it.
Yeah.
It freaked him out, and it would have me too.
Sure.
Now, this one is even more freaky. Again, not necessarily friendly contact, but Adam and I have talked about this before. There was a local woman who said she was burned on her neck. Now, Jody Acevedo was visiting the hospital and reports that she suddenly felt something burning her skin. She took off her scarf and she had 2 lines, right up in here, in the, like around her collarbone, that went down almost like scratches. Okay. So I saw her show, where the scratches were, what they look like. They had a photograph of them. It wasn't like severe, but it obviously wasn't there before.
Right.
And she felt it while it was happening. But, we talked about this, in one of our other recent shows where Adam was like, if you're a spirit and you're trying to get somebody's attention and you're having to build up enough energy to actually create a touch, that a scratch may just be I'm trying so hard that it's not a controlled touch. I'm not necessarily meaning to scratch you. I'm trying to get your attention. And, I've already brushed through you. I've already tried to, move in front of you and nothing's working. And so I finally muster up enough energy that it translates to a scratch or, something like that. Maybe even a shove.
That's
maybe
true.
not even let's say, for example, you got a spirit that's coming the other way and you're walking and you feel that shove. Maybe that's not somebody being aggressive towards you. Maybe it's a spirit that says, this guy's walking straight at me, oh my God, this guy's going to walk right through me. Oh my God. And then just generates enough energy to go, you got to get out of my way, dude. You're not listening to me. There's theories abound, but now that I kind of think about that after we discussed it, it makes a little bit more sense, especially in a place like, Peoria State Hospital, where there wasn't a lot of negativity toward the patients there for them to be acting out, after, in death. Adam, every year I have one of those people that I need to buy a gift for, and they're a unique person, or they're very eccentric, and they just seem to have the regular off the shelf stuff is just not going to work.
Right.
I need that gift that's going to make them go, man, this is exactly what I wanted. So spark something uncommon this holiday with just the right gift from Uncommon Goods.
That's right.
Yeah, look, holiday season is busy enough as it is, but Uncommon Goods makes it less stressful with incredible hand-picked gifts for everyone on your list, all in one spot. Gifts that spark joy, wonder, delight, and you will knock it out of the park with Uncommon Goods. And if you've got, like me, if you've got that college football fan, you can go to the big box store and you can go, well, here's a t-shirt, here's a pennant, here's a hat, here's a bobblehead. And they're just going to be like, oh yeah, okay. But if you want to get them something that's really going to wow them, something like the blueprints of the big house from the University of Michigan. I mean, come on, framed. I mean, these are gifts that you absolutely will blow them away.
Last year, I got Ashley wine glasses with the blueprint of TCU on it.
Hey, yeah. They've got wine glasses and rocks glasses, and you name it. If you've got a team that you love, or that the person you're buying for loves, you can find something just totally unique at Uncommon Goods.
That's right. And when you shop Uncommon Goods, you're supporting artists and small independent businesses. Many of their handcrafted products are made in small batches. So if you see something on there that you like, you better get it, because they do sell out, and they sell out quick because they're handmade and very limited numbers. Uncommon Goods looks for products that are high quality, unique, and often handmade or made in the USA. So they have the most meaningful, out of the ordinary gifts anywhere, like Matt was saying, that, some of them you can even personalize. I did that for Ashley. I got her a puzzle that had our names in the puzzle when you put it together. So you can personalize whatever you want. From holiday host and hostess gifts to the coolest finds for kids, to hits for everyone from book lovers to die-hard sports fans like Matt was talking about, Uncommon Goods has something for everyone. So, and with every purchase you make at Uncommon Goods, they give $1 back to a nonprofit partner of your choice. So far, they've donated more than $3 million, which is incredible. So if you're looking for that uncommon gift, if you want to be the hero of the holiday, you can get 15% off your next gift. Go to uncommongoods.com/grave. That's GRAVE. And I promise you will not be disappointed.
Yeah, that's uncommongoods.com/grave, GRAVE, for 15% off. Don't miss out on this limited time offer. Uncommon Goods. We're out of the ordinary. Now, in the basement, it's always the basement.
Oh, yeah.
People have been really frightened by the white lady or the lady in white. Again, this is not a hotel.
Yeah.
But we've got a lady in white.
There's always a lady in something.
Yeah.
Lady in white, lady in gray, something.
We've got to get more creative with naming these things.
Yeah.
I mean,
Carla would work just fine.
If you Google haunting lady in white, you are going to get like 50 of them. At least.
Yeah, at least. Yeah.
Everywhere there's got a lady in white. Or lady in gray or red.
Lady
or whatever.
in red.
Yeah. But people that have seen the lady in white say that she has long, stringy hair, crazy eyes, and she slowly floats down the hall. Now, one witness described her as saying they could not see the legs. They were seeing essentially from like just below her waist up. So she may not necessarily be floating per se. Her legs just may not be visible, but she has this, the description is she has this long stringy hair, these crazy eyes, and this, draped type white thing and gives the appearance of just floating.
I think I dated her for a while.
Yeah,
stringy hair, crazy eyes.
Yeah,
I think you met her.
Yeah, I think maybe I did. However, people do view her as being a threatening entity.
Hmm.
And it may just be because of her appearance.
Yeah.
But there was one witness named Nicholas Bridges, and he tells a story about the time that he encountered the lady in white. He said he was scared half to death, seeing it.
Mm-hmm.
And he's another one. When you see him tell the story, you can kind of see, even thinking about it kind of spooks him a little bit.
Yeah.
But he was one of the ones that said, you just saw the torso. So it at least gave the appearance that she was floating toward you. Now, it's not like where you see these that, especially in the hospitals, like you would see the ghost of a nurse going from one room to another down the hall, or you see a figure behind a glass window in a door. She apparently comes at you, and I think that's partially why they view her as a more threatening type spirit.
Well, coming right at somebody can be aggressive.
Absolutely.
So,
the video, recreations of these encounters. Yeah. She's scary as hell, man. I mean, she's like coming at you, hands out, reaching for you.
Mm-hmm.
I don't know that's but it, makes for good television.
Sure.
But there is a photo of the lady in white, or at least what they believe is the lady in white. So the photo shows this ghostly white silhouette standing in one of the windows. Now, the picture was taken from the outside of the building, looking in, and it's in one of like the upper floor windows. And you would miss it at first. But when you zoom in and you look, you can see what obviously appears to be like a shoulder and an arm down, and maybe even part of the side of a face. You can't really see any features. So they had this photo, and because people question it, they sent the photo off for verification to ensure that none of the pixels had been manipulated. So it hadn't been photoshopped in there.
Right.
They determined that the photo itself was authentic. So when the Ghost Adventures crew went out to do one of their investigations, that was one of the first things they tried to do, was to debunk that photo.
Sure.
So they got up there, they're trying to take pictures. They're in the room where it, supposedly she would have been standing when the picture was taken. They're looking at the way light's coming in, because it is daylight in the photo. And so they're looking at all the possibilities. What could have been in here? A curtain, a sheet, anything. And they couldn't do it. They were unsuccessful at debunking it. So that photo remains unexplained. And you can see it. It's out there. It's easy to find. It's not super creepy unless you know the history behind all the paranormal activity that's happened at the hospital.
Right.
So I promised y'all a really good story. Okay. And this story is probably one of the more famous ghost stories. But it's definitely the most famous one for Peoria State Hospital. And, like we said, there's a lot of different ghost stories, but this is the one that, it takes the cake.
Mm-hmm.
So one of the former patients, and depending on the source that you look at, this man's name was Manuel A. Bookbinder. Now, some sources say they didn't really know his first name, because he was a mute and he couldn't speak. So, but others say Manuel. Some people say just A. Bookbinder. Apparently his gravestone says A. Bookbinder. So that may be why they believe they didn't know his first name.
Is that his name or his profession?
Yeah. Oh, that's kind of what I wondered.
Yeah.
But They gave him a nickname as a patient, and everyone called him Old Book, you know. So just, hey, that's Old Book over there, you know, 'cause his last name is Bookbinder. That's a lot to say.
Yep, that's true.
So Dr. Zeller had assigned Mr. Bookbinder to the hospital's burial corps, and he was very good at his job. And the interesting thing about it is he would passionately mourn the passing of each and every person that he helped to bury. Everyone. And Dr. Zeller makes a point that he had a routine, that it was the same for every person he buried. He would step back with his shovel, and he would just kind of stand there like he was waiting. And he would take first his left and then his right sleeve, and he would wipe his eyes, okay, where he had been crying. As the coffin was lowered into the ground, he would walk over and he would lean against this big elm tree that stood in the center of the cemetery. They said sometimes he would sob so hard that you could see his body basically convulsing.
Oh, wow.
Okay? And they were so loud that anybody out there could hear him crying for these people. And so the tree became known as the graveyard elm. And this is where he went. So when Mr. Bookbinder died, Dr. Zeller wrote that 400 of the staff and inmates, it said like 100 nurses and 300 patients, saw his ghost mourning at the tree at his own funeral, just like he had for countless others while he was alive. Now, some of the stories go a step further and say that the men lowering his coffin down actually felt it get lighter when they all saw his apparition. So much so that they pulled it up and opened it to make sure that he was really dead and in there.
Oh, wow.
Yeah. But sure enough, his corpse was inside, and they said as soon as they opened the coffin, his apparition disappeared. Now,
that's weird, man.
It gets weirder. A few days later, the graveyard elm began to wither, and over the next year, it died. Now, you know, it's kind of odd for a big tree to just die like that, you know,
right.
Just all of a sudden.
Yeah, not show signs of sickness or anything.
Right. Now, after the dead limbs had dropped off, workmen tried to remove the huge trunk, but they stopped because after the first axe cut, they heard an agonizing cry of despair and pain coming from the tree itself. Now, this is what they say.
That's wild.
So they didn't want to go back out there and try to cut it. They were like, the tree's crying. It's like Bookbinder's tree is telling us, don't cut me down.
Yeah.
So Dr. Zeller suggested that they try to burn it. I mean, it's a dead tree. It's basically just the trunk, you know, try and burn it. So they did. They tried. As soon as the flames got going around the tree's base, the men put them out because they said that the roar of the flames had turned into sobbing and crying like you would hear at a funeral. Now, years later, the elm finally, it says, succumbed to nature when it fell over in a storm. Some stories say that it was struck by lightning, and that's what finally did it in. So you can't visit the tree anymore. But that has got to be one of the coolest stories for so many reasons. Number one, it's almost heartwarming. It's not scary in any way, really. Mm-hmm. Although I imagine it was pretty frightening for the men hearing that tree cry.
Sure, yeah.
But the fact that Dr. Zeller estimates that 400 people witnessed his apparition.
Yeah, see, that's the thing that I found so fascinating about this story was the amount of people that had the encounter.
Yeah.
All of these people that showed up to pay their respects to Bookbinder saw his spirit, or what they claimed was his spirit, out there by the tree.
Yeah.
That's insane.
And Dr. Zeller, with what we know of him, he does not seem like a person that would, spin a yarn,
right,
so to speak. So he obviously, he felt like he knew what he saw, and all these other people saw it as well.
Mm-hmm.
So it gives that part of the story at least some validity.
Right.
Now, some people say that they have seen the apparition of Dr. Zeller roaming throughout the hospital as well. I don't know how they necessarily know that it's him, but they have attributed one of the apparitions to Dr. Zeller as well. So even after death, Dr. Zeller continues to roam the halls of the facility that he helped build. So, pretty impressive. And, even without the Bowen building and some of the other places, it's still a really cool place to visit. Nowadays, they have a commercial haunted house that operates in there. So you can still visit, but and when the season's right, you can go and actually experience it as a haunted attraction. So, pretty cool. I mean, again, this is not your typical haunted hospital or haunted asylum.
Right. Right.
The patients were not mistreated, so there wasn't a lot of anguish and anger and fear and emotion that we typically see. These people were cared for, they were treated, and it like I said, just doesn't seem like a place where you're going, I bet that place is haunted.
Mm-hmm.
I'm telling you, that building that looked like a castle would probably, that's the kind of place you would say, I bet that place is haunted,
Yep.
just by the looks of it. But, a really fascinating story, and Bookbinder's story is one of the best ghost stories that, I've come across in the years that I've done this. So, but I'm curious, how many people we have from that area of Illinois that have heard that story, maybe even have visited the Peoria State Hospital to maybe have their own experience there. I thought it was funny. I went to a lot of the websites that, like TripAdvisor, that would have people posting about their experiences, and they were either all telling the story about Mr. Bookbinder, just like, okay, we got it. What did you experience?
Right.
Or they spin off into something else they experienced somewhere else, and I'm like,
that's weird.
So
why would you do that?
I didn't find any hidden gems in there of but still, I mean, this is a pretty neat place. So let us know what y'all think about it. And one of the best places to do that is in our Facebook group. It's called The Graveyard. You can go on there, search it up. You can find it. Like Adam said, we got our listener stories episode coming up this holiday season. These are the people. These members of the Graveyard are the ones that are telling these stories. So these folks in there have got some incredible stories to tell, some totally bizarre experiences, and they love to share them. We love for them to share them. So if you've got something like that, the Graveyard is one of the best places to do it. Don't forget to go and check out our website. We do have Christmas coming up. On our website, you can find links to find Graveyard Tales merchandise. We've got several designs on there. You can get it, everything from coffee cups to baby onesies, to pillows and blankets even.
Mm-hmm.
So, if you've got that graveyard member on your Christmas list, it's a great time to grab one of those items, and get it here before the holidays.
Or a work party, and you just want to spread the joy of Graveyard Tales.
That's exactly right. Look, I'm biased, but I think our Skull Mike logo is pretty cool regardless.
Oh, yeah.
So
I
maybe,
like it.
maybe you just think, hey, you'd at least think it's cool looking.
Mm-hmm.
But don't forget to rate and review us on iTunes. I know we mention this every once in a while. It does help bring the show up the charts, but what it really does is it makes it easier for people to find, which just brings more folks into the graveyard. So I think that's all I got tonight, man.
Yep, me too.
Until next time, we'll save you a seat in the graveyard.
See you soon.